On today's episode of Locked On Wild, where does John Hynes rank amongst the rest of the Central Division coaches?
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us to take a look at John Hynes, whose postseason win-loss record is obviously something to discuss. We'll also take a look at where Hynes ranks in the rest of the Central Division and some of the key attributes that make a head coach successful. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild, credentialed media member, and joined on a Tuesday edition of the show by Alex Micheletti. Obviously, had Memorial Day yesterday, so hope everybody had a great weekend. Obviously, got plenty of sun. Many of you did. I did especially, but was thinking about topics on the way home from the long weekend, Alex. And I know a lot of people have asked about John Hynes, his career record in the postseason. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to dive in a little bit to Hynes, because it's an interesting discussion. You know, is he the guy? Is he the right fit to lead this team to a lengthy postseason run? And I think there's a little bit of roster flaws, some coaching questions. So I don't think it's 100% on John Hynes by any means, but let's just look at what happened in this most recent series against the Vegas Golden Knights. And a lot of what we blasted Dean Evison for over his tenure of the roster getting too stagnant and waiting too long to make changes, I think are a lot of the things that we remember about that series against the Golden Knights. Like, obviously you had fantastic series from Kirill Kaprizov and from Matt Boldy to really lead the way. But what happened as the series wore on is the Golden Knights were able to start to win the battle of those top lines more frequently as the series went on. And there was no real response from the Minnesota Wild. Like, do whatever you can to get that top line away from Vegas's guys, because they started to heat up. The Wild's top line started to run a little cold. And once that happened, there just wasn't consistent step up from the rest of the lineup. You had that just frankly horrendous challenge late in the series. And when the playoffs hit, that's when any sort of questionable coaching decisions really get magnified. And even some of that little stuff, like the decision to keep going with a guy like Gustav Nyquist, who wasn't giving you much in the way offensively. The decision to pull Zeev Boyum out of the lineup after the high stick. It felt like Bruce Cassidy was the better coach in the series. And if you look at John Hynes' playoff career, in pretty much every series that he's been in, that's been the case. That's been the story. And that is a large part as to why I think those series have been lost.
100%. We've actually seen it in the past couple postseasons of Minnesota head coaches where the other coaches, the opposing coach kind of needles the team. And, Pete DeBoer did it with Dean, and Bruce Cassidy was like, I can't believe they didn't put a checking line on out there. With the top lines, they just decided to keep, go one on, top line versus top line, and just to get him away from Michael, and it didn't, that did not work, right? And so, it's you can be a great regular season coach, but if you can't get it done in the postseason, what are we doing here? And it was questionable up the middle. You had, elevated minutes for, guys like Freddie Gaudreau, and, not giving Rossi the opportunity. The Zeev thing, like you said, was extremely questionable. And look, Zeev just won a world championship with Team USA. I mean, the kid wins everywhere he goes. So it made no sense. And you saw what happened when Merrill came back in the lineup. He was on the ice for just a back-breaking goal for a game that pretty much decided the series. And, it wasn't the final game, but that was a backbreaker. And I don't see it, but that's, like you said, a lot of it is on Guerin too, because Guerin is the one that decides the roster, and so they they might go down the ship together. There's it's not only the head coach, but you have a full coaching staff too, and the Capiano decision still baffles me, because he came from Ottawa, and Ottawa is like, we don't want this. It's been horrendous, having him as the PK coach. And look, they got rid of him and they made the playoffs. So, I mean, that tells you a lot there. There's just, it's a group effort, I know. But still, at the end of the day too, the head coach makes the final decisions on who's in the lineup there. And, he just got schooled by Bruce Cassidy, and the Wild, at some points, in the series, it looked like they had better talent, but it comes down to the coaching a lot of the times too. And Bruce has won a Stanley Cup, and Hines has not. There you go.
Because, look at this. When Hines was with the Devils, 2017, 2018, they made the playoffs. They lose in 5 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Who coaches the Tampa Bay Lightning? John Cooper. Cooper, and this is not a slight at John Hines at all. John Cooper is the better coach of the two. That's just the way it is. That season featured the Hart Trophy Taylor Hall, who absolutely went nuts and propelled that team. But beyond that, you had 2 other guys on that roster that scored 20 goals. That's it. So it was very much like a Herculean effort to get them in. But when you get to the playoffs, one guy really going nuts is kind of easy to stop. Or at least it's not as much of a challenge as if you have multiple lines that are capable of doing it. Their next postseason appearance was the qualifying round in 2019-2020. They lost that to Arizona. So that one is maybe more of a toss-up as far as coaching goes, because obviously Arizona has been all over the place. 2020, 2021, they lose in the first round to the Carolina Hurricanes. Who coaches the Carolina Hurricanes? Rod Brind'Amour. Rod Brind'Amour is the better coach there of the two. Again,
Stanley Cup winner in his playing career, and
not a slight.
Heck of a coach.
Not a slight. That's just the way it is. 2021, 2022. Lost in the first round to the Colorado Avalanche. Jared Bednar is the coach there. Again, not a slight. Jared Bednar is just the better coach of the two. And the most recent trip to the postseason against the Vegas Golden Knights, Bruce Cassidy, the other coach. Again, not a slight. Bruce Cassidy is just the better coach. Now, this is, I think, the important kind of trying to nudge this in the right direction for this segment is obviously we know that the roster has been under some financial constraints for the last few years. Would John Hynes be able to get himself a little closer up the ladder with a more full roster at his disposal? We don't know. Obviously, the first part of the season with Kirill Kaprizov, they were the best team in the league, most points in the league. So you can't I can't sit here and point to all of this without also giving Hynes credit for the start of the season. They needed to come out and play well. They did. Injuries caught up, and the boat took on water after that. So he got them off to a great start, which they needed. So it is a kind of a prove it year, I think, for both Bill Guerin and for John Hynes, because now you can't hide behind the cap. You can't hide behind that anymore because it's not a thing. You've got pretty much your full cap to work with. So maximize the roster. And if Hynes takes them on a deep postseason run and gets them to a cup, wins a cup, then obviously my opinion is going to change. But as of right now, like, you can't leave any areas open to be exposed. And in this most recent round against the Vegas Golden Knights, the Wild did, and that's why they lost.
Yeah, and the Central Division is only going to get harder. I mean, St. Louis getting Jim Montgomery was just an absolute steal, and they have so much young talent that's coming, and Jimmy Snuggerud looks like he's going to be a future superstar, and they have a lot more talent besides him on the way. And Utah looks like they are ready to take off here too, and at some point you think Chicago is going to be good because they're getting all these top picks, and some of them look like they aren't going to be busts at all either. And they have a couple, of course, Minnesotans and Gophers that have joined the team in Sam Renzel and Oliver Moore, and adding to that nucleus, and watch out for Chicago here. So I mean, the Central is going to be tough. It's just it's to be a dogfight. And one thing we know about this Wild team too, even if they have the money, it's can they stay healthy?
Yep, that is the big key. Now I want to play a game when we come back. Just looking at the Central Division and the coaches that inhabit the Central Division, we're just going to kind of try to slot everybody in with rankings. We're going to play higher or lower. Which coaches are higher on the rankings than John Hynes, which are lower? And we'll try to kind of see where he fits in amongst the coaches that make up the division. We'll discuss all of that as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're also packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I love to call Wonderful Pistachios my guilt-free snack, because anytime I'm sitting on the couch watching my favorite show or watching a Minnesota team trying to get as far or further than any Minnesota team has previously, I can have a handful or two of Wonderful Pistachios without feeling bad about eating them. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. We are your team each and every day as well. Also, make sure to hit that YouTube subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new episodes. The month of June is going to be full of free agency and draft coverage leading up to the NHL draft. Even though the Minnesota Wild don't have their first round pick, they could potentially get one back depending on how trades play out here this offseason. So make sure to stay tuned in as we'll start gearing up for the draft and for free agency, because guess what? July 1st, it all goes down. It is going to get crazy up in here. So make sure you follow along so you don't miss out on anything up until that point. All right, Alex, let's take a look at the Central Division coaches, because there are some interesting ones. I think you've obviously got a few names at the top of the list that are mainstays. So let's just start at the top. Jared Bednar, I think, is unquestionably the top coach in the division. I mean, Colorado has been a legitimate contender ever since he took over. Even though they have had some frustrating exits in the postseason here lately, I think a lot of that has more to do with the roster construction than it does him. So I would say, is Jared Bednar higher or lower on the list than John Hines? I would say this is a pretty easy hire.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Cup winner, and they, like you said, it was an interesting trade deadline for them. Some of the assets didn't really work. Charlie Coyle, our former friend, Wild, he didn't help too much, and Brock Nelson, it just it didn't seem like he fit well there in Colorado. So that was tough, but he's a heck of a coach. I mean, he took down John Cooper, and that is tough to do. And he won a cup with Darcy Kemper in that. So that's all you need to know about that.
Yeah, that was some prime offensive coaching by Bednar to get that team to that point. Probably next on the list for me would be Pete DeBoer with Dallas. I mean, he's proven the ability to do it with multiple teams. He's gotten multiple teams to the conference finals at minimum, and is trying to get
money
Dallas
in Game 7s.
Yeah.
He's an incredible coach.
Literally undefeated in Game 7. Now, don't ask about his record in Game 6 because that's not great, but spotless in Game 7. I think this is another over, just because the thing that really resonates with me is that he has proven he can do it with the Sharks, the Golden Knights, and now the Dallas Stars. Like he's a proven winner at all of the stops that he's had.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier in the episode, he's great with the media too, and he knows how to handle that side of things, and play the mind games, and great offensive coach, and just like Bednar too, and Vegas probably should have never fired him, but that's Dallas's game.
Yeah,
and I really like his style of coaching.
Next up, I am going to put on my list, I'm going to go to Jim Montgomery third. Great coach. He turned Boston into an absolute powerhouse, then got blamed for the issues on that Boston roster with the old, you can't fire a whole team, but you can fire a coach. I think we've seen with the fact that Boston has just completely mothballed that was probably the wrong decision. And he turned St. Louis into a fringe. They were one of the hottest teams in the league when he took over. And they went toe-to-toe against the Winnipeg Jets in the first round of the playoffs, despite being a wild card team. He just is a guy that seems like he has a real beat for his roster and finds ways to, much like John Tortorella, just finds ways to get more from everybody on the roster.
Yeah, I love him. Going all the way back to when he was coaching at Denver. He's such a player's coach. He played and he's a heck of a player, and he got, like you said, he got the most out of that St. Louis team. They probably had no business making the playoffs, but they won. They had a 13 game winning streak, or close to that, and he got the most out of Jordan Binnington too, and he's fun to watch. I'm happy that Snuggerud gets to learn from him, and teach him how to be a power play animal with that shot that he has, and another guy that's great in the media, and has such a passion for the game of hockey. It's it's good that he's still in the league. Another St. Louis is another fortunate team that Boston fired him. The Bruins had no business firing him, and they ended up with Sacco coaching it for the rest of the season in Boston. That was a complete disaster, and now they don't even Boston doesn't even know what they're trying to do right now. So it's St. Louis's gain, and like I said, it's that's going to make the Central so much tougher.
Yeah, those are the three that I feel pretty confident are above John Hynes. There are some interesting discussion points with the rest. And so we will finish. We got the ones that are above. Let's sort out the rest as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. We are also your team each and every day as well. And make sure to click all of those buttons, the like button on today's episode, the subscribe button on either YouTube, or if you're listening to us on any of the wonderful podcast apps, make sure to hit subscribe as well. We appreciate the support and the following and the feedback wherever you're listening. All right, Alex, we're diving into kind of where John Hynes ranks amongst the Central Division coaches. And we got the three that I think are pretty clearly above as of this point in Bednar, Pete DeBoer, and Jim Montgomery. How do we feel about Scott Arniel? Like, let's start with him because, Rick Bowness was the coach for the last couple of years and turned Winnipeg into a pretty stout team, both defensively and special teams especially. And Arniel was one of Bowness's assistants, his top assistant over those couple of years. He takes over the reins. Winnipeg not only doesn't miss a beat, but they get better. But then in the playoffs, they're out in round 2. That was a major disappointment, I think, considering the season that they had. So where would you put Arniel compared to John Hynes? Is he higher or lower?
Man, I think he's right there with them. That's such a tough one. I mean, he's had troubles in the postseason too. Going back to when he was with the Blue Jackets. So, man, I would still say that he's higher than Hynes. Just because Hynes has had even more troubles. In the postseason.
Maybe one step higher, like one step up the stairs as opposed to
it's so even, we've heard from former players that he's not really a player's coach, and if I know this guy Mike Commodore, but if you ever hear him talk about Arniel, he puts Arniel right there with Babcock as far as players, non-players type of coaching, so when you hear stuff from former players, it's like that, it's never a good sign.
Yikes. I don't like that. So I do agree. He's in the same, I put him in the same category, and step higher, step lower. It's all about your preference, but
they had an incredible regular season, and with the record they had, you'd think they go further, but that's why Pete DeBoer is why we ranked him so high, is he kind of gave it right to Arniel.
And very, very Dean Evison vein. Like when they got to the playoffs, every game that they lost on the road, it's like they just kind of were like, what are we supposed to do? Like, this is what got us here. Like
they had
going with it.
They had no answer for Mikko Rantanen. There's just no adjustments. And he hasn't done much against Edmonton so far. They've kind of figured out how to slow him down. And so credit to Knobloch there with Edmonton so far. And we'll see if that continues. But that goes to show coaching really does matter.
Yeah, it's the strategy for Edmonton has been, hey, we should pay attention to this guy.
Right. And it's not like Stuart Skinner's Andre Vasilevsky out there either. So it's defense matters, and structure, and who you put out there against Hines, right? And
pretty big keys. This is an interesting one. These next two are really interesting. Let's talk Andrew Brunette, who is coaching Nashville. Nashville was terrible this past season, but I think a lot of people would agree that a lot of it was roster issues. But at the same time, if you're a coach, you are supposed to try to get that roster to mix together, and it just never did. Now, he took over for Joel Quenneville when he was relieved of his duties for the Florida Panthers during that season in which they were very, very good. They get into the playoffs. They can't score on the power play. And shocker, they are ousted. Where would you put Brunette, higher or lower than Hines?
Man, this is another guy that's so inconsistent. With the top end talent that Nashville had, and you don't even come close to coming to the playoffs. That's embarrassment right there. So man, to put him above Hines is tough, right? Because that team, they had a lot more high end talent than the Wild, and they had, and they don't make it. You would think he could have came up with some adjustments, to figure that out. That's. It's flat out embarrassing. I know he was a former Wild player and scored one of the most important goals in franchise history, but coaching wise, we can be critical of him. And I don't think it's so crucial to the communication that the head coach has with the GM, and it just seems like the Trotz Brunette connection is not working at all.
Yeah. Brunette feels to me like a really, 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 really good top assistant.
Yeah, like your power play, guy. And I cannot believe Trotz actually brought him back. I was like, I remember, talking to you off air. I was like, I hope Darby Hendrickson is not one and done, because that would just be just awful for him to go there and just be done right away. But so I actually really am surprised that they're running it back, because it could happen again, and it could get even worse in the media after losses.
Well, I think he definitely will not be back if Nashville suffers a similar fate this upcoming season. Yeah. But I feel like he would be a really good, Florida was just cruising with him as the assistant under Quenneville. Then he took over and they kind of limped into the postseason.
He'd be better than Capiano. That Hines could use him on the bench.
But then he was the assistant for the Devils,
right? And
they were insanely good that year.
Yeah.
And then he moved to Nashville after that, and
not everybody should be a head coach. Be good at what you're really talented at. Specializing in one thing, because clearly we've seen it here. That's coaching is good. Coaching is so important, and you can you look at Montgomery. You can get a team that's probably has no business being in the playoffs, get them into the playoffs based on your coaching.
Yeah. Let's go to Andre Tourigny with the Utah Mammoth. Feels weird saying that for the first time, but
Yes.
I'm good. I'll grow into it. This is interesting because it feels like I think we view the Tourigny tenure so far way differently because it's the first time in a handful of years that we've seen Arizona have a pulse.
Right.
And so I think we give a lot of props to him for bringing them kind of out of it. But at the same time, like, it's still a Utah team that just has very clear limits as to what they're able to do. And so I think that ceiling, I think he's the first one that I clearly put below Hines in the Central Division.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And there was rumors. Remember the crazy rumors that people were like, John Cooper's going to get let go by Tampa, and that he's going to go to Utah there. That was wild. But yeah, Utah, they're a weird team because, again, I talk about the teams that have a lot of up and coming talent. Utah is one of them. I mean, look at Logan Cooley. I mean, he's about to take off in superstardom. Minnesota Gopher fans, watch him here, and he played well in the World Championships. He assisted on that Tage Thompson game-winning goal for USA to win gold for the first time in so long. And Clayton Keller, he should have been on that Four Nations team, and I think should be on the Olympic team. And they've made some really good moves on the back end there. Getting Sergachev from Tampa was just so big for them, and Dylan Gunther looks like another young player that's gonna start to take off. And they have Shane Doan's kid Josh Doan there too. That looks like a pretty good player. So I mean, there's a good young core there for him to figure out. But yeah, it's we talked about it whenever Utah has played the Wild. The past couple seasons. Same thing with Arizona. There's the inconsistency. It's they should be a lot better. They should be pushing for a playoff spot, and we'll see if he's the right coach to take that core going forward. I'm sure with Ryan Smith, he looks like an owner that he knows what he's doing. It wouldn't shock me to see that if a coach like I know Montgomery got hired right away, but if another really experienced coach comes available, it wouldn't surprise me to see him make the trigger and pull.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think they're just waiting to add a splash to the
because he has all the money in the world, and he, unlike previous Arizona owners, he'll spend money for sure.
He'll go get Lindy Ruff once Lindy Ruff is shown the door. Final one in the Central, and again we've got Hines at like 4.5,
right?
4 or 5 in the division right now. Jeff Blashill, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
Blashill, who was just announced as the Chicago Blackhawks' new head coach. Pretty renowned for his ability to develop players on the younger side. So this is Chicago's latest attempt to kind of get the right coach put together for that mix. And so obviously because he's starting out, I'm going to rate him lower than John Hines, but somebody is going to, you would think, is going to find the right mix for that Chicago team. And they're going to start to really put some things together. Maybe it's Jeff, but I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see. But I'm putting him below Hines until we see what he's got.
I'm right there with you. Yeah, he has a ton of experience coaching. He even coached some college hockey too, and this was probably the right move. And I'm glad they didn't get a guy like Greg Cronin, that type of coach, because it doesn't work with this new age player and the Gen Z type guys. And so this this seems like a perfect fit. But again, it's a young team that's going to have a lot of inconsistencies, but they are talented. And the one thing that you can't fault Chicago for is they're drafting very well. I think now you got to develop them though. That's the key. I mean, some of these kids were extremely good youth and college hockey players. You look at Oliver Moore and Sam Renzel was probably the best defenseman in college hockey. Minus he was right there with Z Boyum, and so I mean they have Frank Nazar, who was at Michigan. They have to add to the mix with Bedard, and they just have so much talent. I think that Vlasic kid should probably be on the Olympic team. He's an impressive player. If they can figure out their goaltending, because that's been their Achilles heel. So we'll see if they can figure out what they're going to do in that there. But I think this was a good hire by Chicago, but like Utah, there's going to be some inconsistencies, and we'll see.
Yeah. Time will tell. So we feel like John Hynes is right about the 4 or the 5 as far as coaches go in the Central Division. Let us know in the comments where you put Hynes on the list. Do you have him higher? Do you have him lower? Do you think he can be the guy for this Minnesota Wild roster, or do you also agree that this is the prove it year for him and Bill Guerin now that the cuffs are off, so to speak? We'll continue to debate that as we continue the offseason here at Locked On Wild. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.